So it's time once again to begin a new build tutorial, and this time we will be covering the subject of armor building. Armor models are, like any other model, have their own little intricacies. Now, one major intricacy is that most part you're going to do the majority of your assembly before you paint. Now, with models as aircraft, you'll typically have to build up in sections such as the cockpit, exhaust, props, and all that separately. With armor, you're going to be doing everything, putting everything together for the most part at the same time, and it will ultimately break down into two major sub-assemblies: the turret and the chassis, as well as all the wheels as separate secondary assemblies. Now, another major aspect of armor models is the tracks. Now, there are two overall basic types. The first type are the vinyl kind, such as you see here. They're flimsy and come in one long assembly, and you'll usually have to glue or melt together the two ends together. The other type is the individual link kind, such as you see here. And in addition, the individual link kind also breaks down into two separate types of plastic, such as these, and metal. With the metal, they're very expensive and will typically cost almost as much as the kit itself. However, because they're metal, like the real subject matters tracks, they'll sag and give you the most realism. However, again, they are the most expensive option. Now, another unique aspect is the barrel. In some cases, it'll be a metal barrel, such as this kit came with, actually, or you will have to do two plastic halves of the barrel together and assemble it. So, let's get started then. So, we're ready to now finally start. Now, one of the things you want to do first and foremost is study your instruction guide. Go through it, learn what you need to do, when you need to do it, and how you need to do it. I cannot stress this enough. You want to go into building with a really good idea of what you need to do and how. Another thing you should also do is wash your parts beforehand to make sure there's no oils, no mold release agents, or any of that left on them from production. Now, for this kit, and like most armor kits, we will start with the wheels. Usually it'll consist of two assemblies, so on and so forth. Now, one thing you'll want to do is not attach the tires to the wheel assemblies at this point. Since we're going to be painting those a separate color, it's better to just leave them off instead of having to deal with masking, since they're a separate assembly altogether. Now, some kits, they'll give these to you as made of actually rubber, in which case you don't need to do anything, you just fit them over the wheel. So, to start, we'll get to work on here. So, first and foremost, you want to take your clippers and clip fairly close to the part, but not so close as you dig into it. Now, I'm only going to show how to do one of these on camera, partially to save time since there's so many of them. But yeah, okay, so that's one out. So once you clip it out, you're going to want to come back in using your X-Acto knife to clean up some of that heavy excess. So just I want to go in fairly gently, but still having some purpose and strength in it. Just trim them down so that they're basically no more than probably about that big. Now, at this point, you're going to take your sandpaper. Since this is a fairly curved surface, I'd recommend getting a sanding sponge for this. You can get them at Home Depot or similar hardware supply stores. And you're just going to come in here and just give it a fairly good going over until it's smooth. Now this can, depending on how low you cut the stub, can either take a little bit of time or can go pretty quickly. Okay. Another thing you also want to make sure of is that your sandpaper is still good. Sometimes you'll need to occasionally change it out, and as it starts to get fairly used up and no longer you're biting. Now I'm going to do the same for the other side. Again, just clipping. I'm going to do this a little faster this time, just to, I'd like to get the glue together. Now, since I cut a little closer this time with this one, I'm not going to need to go in with the X-Acto and go straight to the sandpaper. If this is your first kit you're working on, I'd recommend trimming further away from the part, as you can get a lot more control with an X-Acto blade than you can with the clippers. And since getting in there close and not damaging the part takes a little more practice, it's better to take it easy and start slow. Now, the last part we need to cut out is the hubcap. So, much as we did before, we're just going to trim them off the tree. Okay. Put this back in the box. Now, because they're smaller size, it is a little harder to sand them, but you can use basically the same methodology. Only difference being, of course, their size. Okay then, so now it's time to glue. For this, I'm going to be using Tamiya's extra thin cement. And what you're going to do is start by applying it to both sides of the part that are, or the parts that are going to be glued. In this case, the midsection between the wheels. Now you're going to want to wait about 10 to 20 seconds to let this start to get going. And then just line up the two alignment pins and press and hold for another 30 seconds. Now during this time you want to make sure that the parts don't shift. Okay, now once that is done, we now add the hubcap, which we will do in the same manner. Okay, now with small parts, again, it's You're gonna have to just be very careful if you're holding. Oops. See, as you can very easily do that. And then, if necessary, I'd recommend just using some tweezers to help get it in place. Okay, now we're going to let that dry, and then we'll come back, and I'll also, off camera, do the rest of the wheels to save some time.